1. So my mom and I picked out a lovely wedding dress on sale, T-length, long skirts equal a tripping hazard. I was thrilled, my mom was teary. Perfect, right? And then came the fitting. Red, my mother-in-law-to-be, and I went to check on my dress and the alterations, adding bra cups and some ribbon shoulder straps. Now I'm a busty person and short-waisted. The initial fitting had been the standard, taking measurements, notes, etc. The second and final fitting made my sweet, lovely mom-in-law ready to go into a Hulk smash mode that was truly frightening and made me very glad I was only a witness to Red's fury. You ever seen the switch flip in a genuinely nice person? It's like a light goes off, and something terrifying and awe-inducing springs out of the darkness. My dress, my lovely, tiers of cream and lace dress, had awful brown ribbon straps on it, not the color we'd chosen at all. One of them was straight, but the other started near my collarbone, and ended behind my neck. The cups were, despite having my measurements, 2 sizes too small. The result of me trying to shove myself into them was not pretty. Neither was I. I was shaking from anger and panic, tears fighting their way past my hands to drip on the floor. Thankfully, not the dress. And somehow my hair had caught a pin in the dress and pulled half out of his ponytail. Red took a deep breath, pressed a napkin into my hand, and gave my shoulder a squeeze. Get dressed, honey. Don't worry, I can fix it. There's nothing that can't be undone. Breathe. We'll take it home, and I'll fix it. I've probably got the right ribbon in the fabric room, and if not, we'll order some. We have plenty of time. She was so calm, so deceptively, wondrously calm. As I slid out of my dress, I heard the storm begin to break. By the time I tied my shoes, Thimble, the dress alteration person, was backed against a rack of prom dresses, shoulders hunched, gazing at the floor in such abject misery, I actually felt bad for her. While I'd mostly heard only the tone Red had been speaking in, I did catch a few key phrases. Wouldn't have let you near a thimble, let alone a needle, hence the name, and I can't believe they'd hire someone who couldn't snap her way out of a paper bag with a knitting needle. Red did fix my dress. It took her all of about an hour. It might have taken less, but she wanted to make sure there weren't any more errant pins in it. 2. There are so many stories that I could share from my family's living telenovela. But this cousin, E.C., is responsible for so many miscommunications and drama just for her entertainment. If she was bored, she would come up with a story or demand someone do all the work for her, such as when she demanded we help her get into a nursing school, but that's another story. She wasn't a bad person when she was little, as she lived nearby with her parents and was BFFs with my little sister. Her dad got a new job, and they were able to move to the suburbs of Atlanta, where they lived a comfortable life. Not long after that, she became a completely different person, spreading lies to family members to get her a front seat for a showdown. On one notable occasion, E.C. told our relatives that my little sister was ashamed of being Latino and wanted to be white. When that wasn't enough, she told various aunts that little sister was complaining about our family on social media, using racial slurs. Of course, everyone gave us a cold shoulder before we found out why. Little sister, who was suffering from depression at the time, became angry and swore if she ever saw E.C., she was going to punch her in the face. A month later, my parents and little sister were supposed to go to Atlanta to attend a wedding for one of my mom's younger brothers. By some miracle, I managed to talk them out of taking little sister and leaving her with me, as I could not attend due to work. During the wedding reception, E.C. was taking part in her hobby of gossiping with the various guests. One of them was a distant cousin of the bride that E.C. didn't know, as she had just immigrated to the U.S. E.C. started on her lies that someone in the bridal party had been sleeping with the groom, and that the marriage was to save face. This pissed off the distant cousin, who told the bride and her bridesmaids. Words were exchanged and stories were compared, before the family realized that EC had been spreading lies about everyone, including spreading false gossip about the bride, hinting that she was a gold digger. She wasn't. She was a professional translator for a law firm and was making more than the groom. Even the groom admits that she is too good for him. EC gets into hot water and tries to backpedal her lies. EC's mom tries to apologize on her behalf, but no one is accepting. While the men wave it off as women's drama and go back to their drinks, the women shun EC. She spent the rest of the party in a corner. No one would speak to her. Little sister is just happy that no one takes her words at face value. 3. I'm 27 and male. I'll start this off by saying my wedding is scheduled for April because my fiancée, 25 and female, has always dreamed of a spring wedding. And I really like the idea too. I have an older brother, 30, and last Saturday I was called over to my parents' house to talk about something, but they refused to tell me until I got there. They then sat me down with my brother and told me that my brother wants to use my wedding as the perfect day for him to propose to his girlfriend. I was instantly mad and told them absolutely not, but they ganged up on me. I ended up so enraged to the point that I, one man, somehow backed all 3 of them into a corner. I told them that if they want to do this, then not only will they all be uninvited, but I'll also cut off the financial support I've been giving them monthly, since they pay to have my golden child brother go through college by taking out a second mortgage. I landed a decently high-paying job and have been sending $500 to my parents monthly to help ease their mortgage. And I didn't ask for a stake in the ownership of their house either because I really don't want it. It was entirely goodwill, and I can cut it off at any time. I left without speaking anything more to them, but my brother came to my home the next day to yell at me that I ruined his big chance because now our parents are siding with me and say they'll evict him if he tries to propose at my wedding. He said I was financially blackmailing our parents and that he just wanted a good chance to propose because he was afraid his girlfriend might leave him soon. I said that was his problem, not mine, because my wedding day is not about him. And if he tries to propose at my wedding, I will have him thrown out. That's not a maybe, but a definite. And I doubt his girlfriend would appreciate a proposal being followed up by being tossed out by a bouncer. He yelled a few choice words at me, then went crying to our only surviving grandparent, our maternal grandmother. And she called to try to ream me over the phone. No surprise, my brother heavily embellished the version of the story he told her. But she still sided with him after I gave her the real story. She tried to hold her ground, but the verbal backlash I ended up giving her left her crying. That got back to my parents, who were pissed at me for taking things so far, but I told them I only went that far because I had to when they were all trying to get me to let my brother use my wedding as his springboard for a proposal. They ended up agreeing with me, but still stated they feel like I'm crass. And my brother showed up at my home again to scream at me that I'm an asshole, and I hope I'm happy with myself for not allowing him the opportunity. My fiancée knows what my brother tried to do, and she's very angry about it. She's almost ready to have him uninvited if he pursues this any further. Normally, I have a very mild temper, but when it comes to certain people like my brother, parents, and grandmother, I can easily get short with them because of all the past favoritism. My grandmother especially. She always sided with my brother and believed his lies no matter what he did. She's the biggest reason my parents favored my brother too. She kept trying to convince me over the phone to let my brother propose at my wedding, that I ended up losing it on her. I ended up speaking with my brother again and threatened to tell his girlfriend if he was still intending to propose at my wedding without permission. He took it poorly and called me an awful person. So I pointed out that my wedding isn't about him. Our parents were there for this, and they backed me up. I think my brother did a double take when they did that. My dad pointed out that he'd raised my brother wrong, and that this was on him. So from now on my brother was to show them real respect, and they wanted to get an official lease drawn up for him to pay proper rent and utilities. He was only paying them $300 a month without contributing to any utilities or food. And if he doesn't want to pay, he can move out and they'll rent his room to someone else. My brother turned to our mom for help, but she just agreed with Dad. He looked like he was having a conniption and then left the house. He came back a couple hours later, but spoke to no one and locked himself in his room. 2 days later, my brother announced that he was moving in with Grandma because she invited him, and our parents basically told him that if he wants to live with her, then go ahead. My brother responded to this by saying that we all hate him for just wanting to propose to his girlfriend. My parents pointed out that it's not that he wanted to propose, but where he wanted to do it, and he'd get no support for it. He is refusing to talk to our parents now. My grandmother did try to call me again, but it ended with me telling her that my brother will not be allowed to propose at my wedding, plain and simple, so he can get over it or not come. And the same goes for her. I ended up calling her out on her favoritism towards my brother since we were kids, but she tried to deny it first, but couldn't keep doing so because of how much I'd pointed out. She ended up crying again while I told her that if she keeps trying to insist on this, then she won't be coming to my wedding. She begged me not to rescind her invite, but she still doesn't understand why I couldn't let my brother have his way before ending the call. My fiancé is 100% on my side, and is fully ready to remove my brother and grandmother from the wedding. My grandmother hasn't called again, and she's not talking to my parents either. My guess is my brother went crying to her again, to tell her mommy and daddy weren't enabling him anymore. So she offered for him to move in with her, but there's certainly nothing she can do to sway me. And I think my last conversation with her made her realize that. I didn't wish to tell my brother's girlfriend, but she called me up on a Saturday about my Reddit post. She saw it read in an online video, and realized it might be me, the way I described my brother and grandmother, so yeah, now she knows. She ended up tearing my brother a new asshole, and he still tried to justify himself to her. That's when she told him they were through and cut all contact with him. My brother, of course, blamed me, even though his girlfriend said that she's been ready to leave him for a while now, and that if he tried to propose, no matter where, she'd have told him no, so that's it. My brother showed up at my place one more time to have a fit, and said he is boycotting my wedding. He actually thought he had leverage that he and Grandma won't go. I said I wouldn't miss him, and that he's in his 30s now and needs to grow up. Our parents have cut the umbilical and are no longer supporting him, and they're already repainting his room to rent it to someone else. And they plan on renting out my old bedroom as well, because they need the money after the financial hole he left them in after dropping out of college, just to mooch off them for a while and then get a degree with an online college later, and then barely paying any rent while also making them pay for his food and utilities, despite having a good-paying job. They spent the world on him, and he wasn't the least bit grateful. That made my brother just shut down and leave, and since then we've not heard a peep out of him. And yes, I have very good security hired for the wedding, and they'll toss my brother out like bouncers in a heartbeat. 4. I'm from a South Asian family, currently residing in a country about 10,000 kilometers away. Having set up a life and doing pretty okay for myself and my own. I was recently engaged to be married later this year. Enter the entitled family comprising of my entitled uncle, entitled aunt, and entitled cousin. Entitled family has always been super competitive for some reason, always playing a game of one-upmanship. Throughout my entire childhood, I've observed them trying to keep the extended family indebted to them, making them indispensable. If it wasn't buying the cousins pricey gifts, it was through the random, unnecessary remodeling of the ancestral home. I went to study abroad, so entitled cousin has to, even if it's for a semester. I buy a car, so entitled cousin has to, even if it's with entitled uncle's money. I plan on getting married, so now entitled cousin has to, even though he's about 3 years younger. Cut to 5 months ago. My parents let the extended family and other relatives know that I'm preparing to settle down. Mistake number 1. Little did we know that Entitled Family would be competing on this one too. After going through a bunch of candidates, we come across a potential match that, as luck would have it, is pretty close to some relatives we bond well with. We get talking, and pretty soon we find that we're really compatible. Easy to keep the conversation going, similar likes and dislikes. Essentially one of those matches made in heaven kind of deal. My significant other and I decide it's time to set a date. We let our parents take it further, and we decide on a date. After that's done, my parents start letting the rest of the family know about the development. One of the first few people they inform happens to be Entitled Family. Mistake number 2. All this while, Entitled Family have apparently been going full force on finding a match for Entitled Cousin. So proactive, in fact, that they apparently preemptively book a venue, hotel, caterers, etc. for the big day far in advance. As soon as they find out, they scramble to let everyone and their mother know how we went behind their backs, finalizing everything without consulting anyone. Until this moment, they had conveniently kept it under wraps that their particular wedding date is a day before mine, and that we had hijacked their big day. Over the past month now, I've had zero contact with any of these family members, although my mother has to field calls from irate aunts who are furious about not being involved in the decision. That is a major part of our culture. My father has to field calls from his brothers who are too dim-witted to understand that it's a question of 2 different nations, and it's practically and logistically possible to change our set date to sate their ego. A couple people actually had the audacity to push it to mid-next year. Because some of them can't handle the cold, and then there's kids' exams to consider, and finally mild bribery in the form of promises to pay for the wedding themselves. None of us want a big fat wedding to begin with, but thanks for the offer, I guess. He finally lost his cool 2 weeks ago and tells them point blank that they're stupid. He used another colorful word if they believe that Entitled Family fixed the date, booked the venues, and finalized other major services for the wedding all in one evening. And people are free to choose which wedding to attend. We have essentially been boycotted for not kowtowing to Entitled Family and their wishes. 5. I am polyamorous and in a committed long-term throuple with my partner Aaron and my fiancé Jack. We have been together for almost 3 years and collectively raise our 12-year-old daughter. My partner is also poly, and my fiancé chooses not to date others. We communicate very well and make decisions as a family. Aaron moved in with Jack and I about 18 months ago. Jack and I have been together for almost 2 years at that time. Just a bit of background. Jack and I are getting married within the month. Our families are generally supportive, if only curious about our family life. Even if they don't quite understand, they accept us for who we are, and simply enjoy that we are happy and healthy. Jack's mother, with whom I have always had a nice relationship, is even paying for the alteration of my wedding dress. However, my mother-in-law has a best friend of 50 years that found out about our family through Facebook. I have never met or spoken to this person before. She requested me as a friend. I accepted after my mother-in-law told me who she was, and posted an inflammatory paragraph on my Facebook wall. She asked what the hell was wrong with me and what do I think I'm doing. This happened to come at a particularly stressful time as I was currently in the ER waiting room due to a family member's medical health crisis. I was already speaking to Jack about this situation, despite the fact that he was at work. I rarely interrupt him unless it's an emergency. I mentioned his mom's friend's actions as well, and they both agreed it was grossly inappropriate and entitled of her. I took the post down. We both sent this woman, Deborah, private messages asking her to direct any questions or concerns to us in a less public setting. I was polite for my mother-in-law's sake because I respect her. Hours later, and Jack and I get our own messages from Deborah. She explains that she has been a marriage and family therapist for 35 years, and I am a sick, twisted, narcissistic predator. She lauded herself as brave, kind, and righteous for letting us know her opinion. She told Jack that he was naive and obviously being manipulated. Deborah has no knowledge of the inner workings of our family. She was nevertheless convinced I sleep with people indiscriminately, without protection or the consent of my partners. I was broken, she said, and now I break others. I deserved no one and nothing, and Jack deserves better. She focused on the fact that I had taken down the post as a deliberate focus on ignoring discussion and knowledge, and claimed I was triangulating the situation by selfishly tattling on me and interrupting Jack at work. Remember, we were already dealing with an emergency. Finally, she uninvited herself to our wedding, which we had included her as a courtesy only. Neither of us answered her out of respect to my mother-in-law, but it blows my mind how on earth she convinced herself this was appropriate. She hasn't seen Jack in over a decade and never talks to him. To me, she was a stranger. She asked no questions of either of us to gain clarification. This woman is a therapist. She included multi-ethnic relationships in her list of unconventional clients she had worked with. She talked mostly about how talented she was and patted herself on the back for martyring herself by thrusting her unwanted opinion into the lives of others. My mother-in-law, fortunately, disagrees with her friend. She has understandable protective feelings towards her son, but sees we are happy. It wouldn't be a wedding without drama, right? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Stresses and Dresses, Wedding Hijinks, number 5. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and share it around with all your friends and family. I greatly appreciate it when you do that, and it helps the channel a lot. Which helps me, and helps you, because it means more videos. I also hear that all the cool kids are selecting the notification bell and selecting all notifications if you're feeling naughty. Right, let's see. Today is Thursday, isn't it? It is. Yes, it's Thursday. And I don't think there's there's no shoutouts today. I don't believe there are. No, there's no shoutouts. Okay. I think the next birthday shoutouts and such are in April. So that's fine. April, and I think there's at least one in May so far. Okay, so that gives us time for Hellfreezer's question of the day. Let's see. What are we going to ask today? Okay, now as I record this, my eye is drawn to my desktop background, which is a picture of a comedian called Sarah Pascoe that I rather like, as both an entertainer, because she's very funny, and she's also very, very pretty. One of the few blonde women I'm actually attracted to. But that's not relevant. Who are your favorite comedians? Can't say I'll agree with every answer, but there are no wrong answers. Lately I'm into Gabriel Iglesias, always into Eddie Izzard, and there are a few that I loathe. Ricky Gervais. But I do love James Acaster, and I mean, I could go on for a while actually about the comedians I like. Margaret Cho, Lenny Bruce, if you're going back a bit. Not a huge fan of George Carlin, but I appreciate what he does, if that makes sense. Yeah, anyway, who are yours? Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.